once you tap into it and you tap into that resilience, like it's there, you have it. And that's just, it's Jewish, but it's like also very specifically like the third generation.
If you heard what I heard, this podcast shares the powerful stories of Holocaust survivors, told by their grandchildren, the last generation to ever hear Holocaust survivor stories firsthand. So join me as we listen, learn, and remember. Together, we can make sure the world will never forget so that it never happens again. My name is Carolyn Siegel. I'm the founder and executive director of If You Heard What I Heard. I'm honored to kick off our first podcast episode with Ari Sarna, one of our interviewees, and his sister, Ilana Sarna Toledano, mom of 3 and jewelry designer. Ari shares the story of his grandfather, Joseph Sarna, who overcame numerous challenges both personally and circumstantially during the Holocaust to come out and build an amazing life and a legacy that endures and continues to grow today. We filmed Ari's interview in May 2023 at the Skirball Cultural Center in Los Angeles, and just a few short months later, October 7th happened. Today, we'll dive deeper into Ari and Ilana's experience in growing up with their Holocaust survivor grandparents, the rise of antisemitism, and the lessons we can all take away from what Joseph and so many others experienced during the Holocaust. Welcome, Ilana and Ari. Ari, you have 2 sisters, Ilana and Danielle. How did you decide who was going to share your grandfather's story for If You Heard What I Heard, and what made you want to share your story with us?
I was thinking about this before. The way that it all came about was actually it was a team effort. Ilana discovered your organization on Instagram. She sent it to Danielle and me. Danielle knew Dana Arshan, and she works with this girl, Carolyn, and then Danielle was like, do you want me to contact my friend Dana and see if one of us can interview? And then it just ended up being me interviewing. And I don't exactly know what the decision was. I think it helps that I'm the only one without children. So I think this timing wise, it worked, responsibility wise. And what made me want to share the story, the stories of all of our grandparents, Joseph, Papa, who I spoke about in the interview, and our other 3, they're everything to us. I mean, they're just the most important pieces of our past. And we honor them, all 3 of us, in any way that we can, all the time, for better and for worse. It is a 24-hour a day existence being a grandchild of survivors. And it's one that I cherish, and to be able to share it in such a cool and kind of interesting way, it's an opportunity I didn't want to pass up.
Well, that means a lot. We're really grateful that you shared your story with us. Your family, Ari, Ilana, and Danielle, you're the grandchildren of 4 Holocaust survivors. So Ari, for you, how did you decide that Joseph's was the story that you wanted to share?
All 4 stories are equally as, it goes without saying, all 4 stories are equally as important to us. Like, one is doesn't matter more than the rest. They're all extremely important. They're all extremely interesting and riveting. They're very different from one another, which I always thought was cool, just from a variety perspective. Like, each story has a different, element to it, different tone, different themes. My grandfather, for example, Joseph, oldest of 6 brothers, born with a deformed leg, and somehow made it through some of the most physically taxing concentration camps in existence, separated from his brothers. Our other grandmother on my mom's side was saved by a Gentile family, a righteous Gentile family, and lived in plain sight, disguised as a Christian in the Warsaw Ghetto. Just totally different themes, different lessons to be taken from it. So they're all worth telling. Why did I tell this one? I think from a storytelling perspective, it's just kind of the most linear chapter by chapter story. This is the one. Some of the other stories, I don't know every single detail. This one, I know all the locations. I know the rough timelines. I know anecdotes that happened in each place. So it really, just from a storytelling perspective, it was an easy one to choose, just to be able to regurgitate it and elaborate on it. Yeah, I think that's why I gravitated towards that one.
And you've been to a lot of the places. Like, I feel like you retraced your grandfather's steps too. Like, you've been to Europe and you've been to these camps.
For sure. Actually, Ilana and I both, separately. And if I'm talking too much, Ilana, take the mantle. But we both were lucky enough to go to our grandfather's like hometown, Jawoszyce, Poland, shtetl in the middle of nowhere, Poland. In high school, our high school takes the senior class every year to Poland for 7 to 10 days, and then to Israel. And our years, 4 years apart. I think they told us it was a coincidence, but I don't believe that.
It definitely was a coincidence. I remember sitting at the orientation in the school with my parents, and we received a copy of the plan and the itinerary, and my mom gasped like in in the hall. Like, I mean, people were like, "Are you okay?" Like, she was so floored to see this very obscure small shtetl on the itinerary. And when we afterwards, like, I think we approached the director of the program or some, I mean, I don't know, whoever it was there. And they were like, well, there's still the walls of the synagogue are still standing. And I believe the walls of the Beit Medrash, right? Like
I remember the shul.
The shul for sure. But I think also like the yeshiva or something is still partially standing. And so we went, which was just incredible. My class, there were roughly 70 kids just standing on this like tiny road in really the middle of nowhere, Poland, knocking. I was knocking on what we presumed was our grandfather's house. And actually I was allowed in. I think Ari, you weren't allowed in, right?
No, that's a whole story in and of itself. I tried. The guy was not about to let me in with like 80 Jewish kids in like hoodies and sweatpants standing right behind me across the street. It wasn't happening, but
wow.
But whatever, it's an experience.
It brings it to life in a really different way, doesn't it? Like, to be standing where your ancestors were standing.
Maybe they asked you to do this too, Ilana. I don't know, but I said Kaddish in the walls of the shul, where my grandfather and his brothers were bar mitzvah. I mean, that was very emotional.
Ari, can you explain what Kaddish is for those who are listening who are not Jewish or don't know?
Kaddish is a prayer. It's a significant prayer in Judaism that's said kind of throughout different versions of prayer for different reasons, but the main reason is for people who are mourning or commemorating their dead loved ones. It's I couldn't tell you the translation of it. I don't know, but I know that it's meant to honor and commemorate and mourn and cry and grieve all at once together. So if someone loses a parent or close relative, they say it for a year. So, and I guess in more symbolic ways, like me, you'll say it for like past generations and things like that.
Yeah, I think that that's actually something really interesting about us as a people, as a Jewish people, is that, even like when you're in synagogue, they'll say like, stand for those who have no one to say Kaddish for them. And there were 6 million Jews that were lost in the Holocaust. And so I think there's something really personal about like, this is our direct lineage. And we say it, we still feel it in our lives today that we have missing family members because of this horrific experience that happened not that long ago. But I think there's also something to be said for like, we feel the loss of those 6 million in our people today. Ilana, what was it like for you to watch Ari's interview? Like, when you were watching it, were you like, oh no, that didn't happen? Or I remember him saying this instead.
So I actually knew pretty much everything that he talked about, but I had never heard it spoken in a storytelling manner with a beginning, middle, and end. I remember, like, apropos, before our trip to Poland, we often had, I mean, every Shabbos my grandparents were over, but we also often had my grandfather's brothers. There were 4 brothers who survived, but one of the 4 passed away relatively young. So the other 2 would come over, I don't know, once a month maybe for Shabbos. And we invited them over knowing that I was going to visit Javashits, and we put out the map on the dining room table, and they were all like sharing stories and tidbits and like arguing where this happened and where that happened. And it was like, I heard the stories, but it was like an overwhelming kind of like discombobulated way to receive it. And it was the polar opposite of the way Ari delivered it. And that was really special. And I've told him this before, but I'll say it again. It's just such a gift that he gave us and to the future of our family and to the world to have this documentation in such a beautifully expressed and eloquent way. So thanks, Ari.
Yeah, thank you, Ari.
You're welcome, everybody. You're welcome.
Ari, what was your family's reaction to watching your story? Like specifically your parents, Danielle. Like, did your perspective on your grandfather's story change after giving your interview? Like, did you learn something new about him or your family through this process?
The reaction was overwhelmingly positive. We're very proud of where we come from, our whole family, like without fail, every single one of us. We love the heritage that we share. So I figured people would appreciate it. I to be honest, knowing certain people in my family, I expected some nitpicking with the details of the story because of that pride that we take. Honestly, I think maybe even rewatching it, I caught one or two insignificant mistakes, and I thought like, oh crap, like that's going to be the focus of the response. No one's going to appreciate it. They're just going to be like, oh, you should have gotten that right. I could not have been more wrong. It was just pride through the roof. I made both my parents cry, which is always fun. They really appreciated it. It was the first time I'd sat down and actually told the story, like Ilana said, beginning, middle, end. Like it was the first time I ever did that. And I guess you could say that changes perspective a little bit, or it makes it go from like into like HD almost, like it, like I saw it maybe more clearer than before because it was so structured and you were, so good at the way you asked the questions were great, and it helped guide like the flow of the story in my mind. So that helped a lot. I told you this, and I told my sisters this. I do still to this day feel a little guilty that I only got to tell one of the stories and not all four of the stories. But we have time. We have time. If you ever want to break that one cardinal rule that I only get one grandparent, I will be more than willing.
Well, my hope is Danielle and Ilana will want to share.
I agree. I think they should. We have cousins too. I mean, listen, you've blown up, right? You have. I don't know how you're going to fit all these interviews. Your wait list is extensive, and that's amazing. That's amazing. I was so happy when you told me that. But we got so many people here, friends and family, who would love to do it. I've heard so many people tell me, like, I would do this, I would do that. One day, if God willing.
And I want them to. We just need resources. So
100%. It makes sense. You're not
huge plug for resources.
Yeah. But donate here.
Donate here. Yeah. Make that happen. No, it's true. I mean, like, I think that to everyone's credit who's been a part of this organization and who continues to be, I think sometimes people look at us and think that we're a much bigger operation than we are. It's literally, I mean, it's me showing up with an iPhone filming these. Like, there's no bells and whistles. We now have lights, thanks to one of our interviewees who donated lights.
Man, what I would have some better lighting on my face.
Better lighting. Yeah. Yeah. But it's
I was shot with an iPhone.
I was shot with an iPhone.
Wow.
So well done.
Really?
Wow. Yeah. iPhones. Okay, this question is for both of you. So we filmed Ari's story before October 7th, and it launched January 2024 after October 7th. Has your perspective changed on the importance of sharing the story, like your grandparents' story post October 7th?
I don't think it's shifted. I think it's just only been kind of like enhanced. The need for truth telling has never been more obvious. There's just been, there's the atrocities of October 7th, and then there's like the whole aftermath and everything that's happened around the world with the denial and the antisemitism. And I just feel like we want to tell our grandparents' stories to remember them and to honor them, but also to say, like, this actually happened. Like, you cannot deny and change the fact that this happened. The same way with October 7th, like, this happened.
We've been shouting from the rooftops for years. This is what our grandparents went through. This is the danger of anti-Semitism. This is why we need Israel. Mm-hmm. So like after October 7th, did that change for you at all?
I think it took something that was always like a lesson or a hypothetical in my mind, and it just like made it very real overnight, like immediately. It's something that we've been saying forever. We, meaning like the greater community, have been saying forever how necessary it is to tell these stories, preserve the stories, learn from them, and make sure things like this never happen again. And that was always, not that, of course we meant that, but we never had, thankfully, never had an opportunity or need to put it into practice. And then October 7th happened. And all of a sudden, like Ilana said, the day of, or the days of, worst thing to happen in our lifetime, probably. But, and after that, the reaction of the world, which really, in retrospect, shouldn't be all that shocking to us, like hatched into the world just all this dormant and brewing anti-Semitism, and it gave everyone such an excuse to show their true colors, I guess, and to like wear their Holocaust denial and Holocaust revisionism and Jew hatred just proudly on their sleeve with a smile. Like there was no need for, like, it's weird. It's a pretty interesting phenomenon that it just allowed people to reach into a part that they probably, not everybody, of course, but a lot of people, part of them that they always had, and now they're like, all right, this is okay now. And that's the scariest type of attitude that can be if you spread that around like that. It's so casual now to hate on Jews, and that's really scary. So I remember speaking to you not long after October 7th, right? And you were telling me about some of the efforts you were doing, and I remember we both just kind of came to the conclusion that like what you're doing with this organization is more important now than it was when you interviewed me. And that's so true. It's sad, but it's true. So I don't know, that I always thought was a really, just to put October 7th, and if you heard what I heard in the same conversation, like that's just I think an interesting way to frame it.
It's interesting. I have some interviewees who say like, I was always prepared for this moment that like it could happen again. Right. And then I think for a lot of us, certainly for me, I always felt like our grandparents said it could happen again, but it never felt real to me that it was actually ever going to happen again. And then October 7th happened and you're like, oh no, it could. This is what they were talking about. And with that, Ilana, you live in Israel. Your whole family was in Israel when October 7th happened. We actually had 3 interviewees that were in Israel on October 7th. And I remember like checking in with everyone, just, do you need to get out? Can I help you get out? Like, are you okay? Like there was a lot of checking in, but I can't even imagine what that was like to be in Israel on October 7th. You guys are the grandkids of 4 Holocaust survivors. So like, how did the weight of what happened hit you as the grandkids of Holocaust survivors? And especially being in our homeland and the place that is ours.
I experienced October 7th as like 2 people. I was like Ilana Sarna alone, and then Ilana Sarna Toledano, the mom. And I think like as a granddaughter of survivors and as like a staunch Zionist and growing up, I feel like this was like I rehearsed my whole life kind of like for this moment. Like there was something, like you said, like we were told like this could happen again, this might happen again. It really happened to people that we really knew, like a real tangible threat of it happening again. And when it finally did, it was like, okay, well, we need to use like all the tools that our grandparents gave us and work through it that way. But then there was also this other version of me who's like, okay, but I have to like look after my babies and make decisions for my kids. So a part of me was like, I want to stay and be in this here. And another part of me was like, I want to leave and like secure my children and their safety. And there, as with all children and grandchildren of survivors, that comes with so much guilt. There's so much guilt in like everything that we do. And yeah, we were trying to get out. It was really scary. Nobody knew what was going on. I was not looking at my phone. I was not aware. Like I knew what happened, but I was told by a friend of mine who grew up here, who's also a psychologist. She was like, detach. Like you have to detach in order to survive. And so like I was not looking at videos, photos, nothing. My friends who were texting me, like I was like, get me out of these group chats, like, or find a new chat. I don't want to hear about it. And I was focused on getting out. And my brother and sister left that Saturday night. They were always scheduled to leave that Saturday night. And then every day thereafter, for about a week, I would say, they were trying to get us on flights that were getting canceled one by one. And eventually we got out on a humanitarian flight to Cyprus. And then from Cyprus, we went to Italy. I was with my husband and my kids. And walking through Europe was just like I was like, or actually it was when I was in Cyprus initially, it was like sunny and bright and everyone was on vacation. And I was like, does everyone know like what we just came from? Do I look Jewish? Like, do I look sad? Do I look scared? Do I look, it was my whole, I didn't want my kids like to be heard speaking Hebrew, like everything. And then I was thinking about stories I heard of people like taking their mezuzahs down, like in Poland. And I was like, no, like we can't, or like, hiding their Magen David, their Jewish star. And I was like, I can't, this isn't us. We're not going to be this way, but there's just like this constant push and pull.
No, it is. It's a push. It is a push and pull. I'm so happy you said that because I think as grandkids of Holocaust survivors, there's an instinct, a very strong instinct to run, right? To flee when things get dangerous or scary. And then there's also a piece of us as 3Gs specifically that are like, no, we are not hiding. We are not scared. We are not going to take down our mezuzot. We are not going to hide our Magen Davids because we are not going back. We are not that anymore. We are strong. We're safe. We're warriors now. I think there's a different mentality.
Right. And the biggest difference is that now we have Israel and it took place in Israel, right? And so like we're protected by our own people. And
well, it's different. I think I don't know. I mean, I think that our grandparents and their families were sort of caught off guard a little bit. I think they saw that things were changing and I think some of them tried to get out. And I don't, it's not a blanket statement to say that like they were all caught off guard, but I think that like there's a similarity in that like, oh no, that actually can't happen. Like who could have ever imagined gas chambers and concentration camps and the lack of humanity and darkness of humanity? I actually had a Holocaust survivor after October 7th say to me, I gave a talk at a Jewish Federation and I was wearing my Magen David and he came up after I spoke and he said, with tears in his eyes, he said, after October 7th, I told my kids to hide theirs. And he said, I'm so proud that you're wearing yours. That's us. That's 3Gs. We're going to proudly wear it.
The experience having the grandchildren of Holocaust survivors, I think that was an extremely unique way to experience a day like October 7th. Just from like an intellectual standpoint, all the parallels that we experienced that day, I was the whole day and for the several weeks after, I was really kind of just comparing it to stories I heard from my grandparents about, when we left Danielle, our other sister, and our brother-in-law Ron, and I flew home Saturday night of October 7th. That was our ticket. We always had it. And our parents stayed back for an extra 4 or 5 days for whatever reason. Our first cousin was also in Israel. He stayed there. Ilana, obviously, and her family stayed there. All the other cousins and friends that we have. So getting on a plane, leaving people, saying goodbye. I remember hugging my parents when they left. And I was like, I'm hugging them in a active war zone, not knowing when I'll see them again. It made me very upset. But when I said goodbye to Ilana and her kids and Shai, it was actually the night before. So it wasn't like a ceremonious goodbye. It wasn't, I didn't know, obviously, what would happen a few hours later. So that hurt also, having not like given tight enough of a hug. Separating from family is a huge theme in Holocaust stories in general. So to me, it really brought it was like a weird whatever. I felt like I was in like standing next to my grandmother at the train station when she was saying goodbye to her parents and little brother. It was just very strange, and I really was what was going through my head at the time. And then after, when we got home here, like Ilana said, when she was in Cyprus and Europe after, people hearing us talk about what we had just gone through. The taxi driver on the way back from the airport, me, Danielle, and her husband Ron were in the back seat talking about rockets and sirens and shelters. And here, the news obviously had hit already. So this guy heard it on the news, and now he has these 3 random passengers talking about it. And he turns around, he's like, I don't mean to eavesdrop, but like, I'm hearing what you guys are talking about, and I'm so sorry. And it's crazy. And that was, I don't know, it was just another moment that really hit me as like, we just escaped something. Okay, we go to Israel all the time, and we come home all the time. So we leave Israel all the time. But it was the only time I ever had to get out of Israel. And to get out of what is our home base is a horrible, horrible feeling. To have to flee Israel. Not that I want to give myself we didn't leave because we were scared. We left because that was our ticket and we had to come home. But also,
I left because I was scared.
It's nothing to be ashamed of for anybody.
I'm a little ashamed.
No, a lot of people were in the same boat. A lot of people left.
I know a lot of people are in the same boat, but it's unfair in a lot of ways, and the same way I guess you could say, like, people who got out early, like that kind of guilt. Like I felt like a snippet of like survival guilt, right?
People left right before the war.
Yeah.
That's another thing. So I'll just say to Ilana, like, you were thinking of your kids when you got out. You were not scared for yourself. You were scared for your kids. And that is noble and totally nothing.
We didn't know. No one knew what was going to happen, right? And Israel sort of always has a target on its back. And thank God we have the IDF, and thank God they're as strong as they are. But, Ilana, you're descended from Holocaust survivors. So the instinct to protect your kids, I'm sure part of that played into it. Like, I've seen history. I've seen where this goes, where this leads.
Yeah, it definitely did. I also it's silly, but like whatever valuables I had, like I carry them with me. I was thinking of stories of, the way our, like the gold that was hidden and the diamonds that were hidden. And I don't know, just different little things that help people get ahead when they got to wherever they got. Those stories were definitely playing.
Yeah, you think about all of it because I think that we as grandkids think about it. Like, I don't know that my friends who are Jewish who don't have Holocaust survivors, like, I don't know. I think on one hand, if you have a reference point of like knowing people who had grandparents that survived the Holocaust, you think about it. But like, it's in us. It's like actually part of our DNA.
Because of what you just said, it's in our DNA. Ilana brought something to my attention earlier today that I love and I think is awesome. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, do you want to say it? Or do you want me to say it?
No, you say it. It's
basically how like we grew up always hearing about and kind of joshing about our inherited trauma, right? But post October 7th, I don't know where I heard it, but someone said, I don't remember who said it, I wish I did, but they were talking about inherited resilience. Like we always knew that we couldn't use the word can't growing up. Like, you can't say you can't because look at what your grandparents went through, right? Like, there's nothing you can't do. But it was never framed so perfectly. And to say like, okay, yeah, there is this inherited trauma, but there's also inherited resilience. And like, you need to tap into that. And it might be harder. We were talking about hope also. My brother and I, one of the hostages' mothers, Rachel, she always talks about how hope is mandatory. So I got to reading more about hope. And there's Rabbi Sachs writes about hope, and he talks about how optimism is a passive virtue and hope is an active one. And it's just, it like has stayed with me ever since I read it. Like, it's a muscle that you have to work hard to flex, But once you tap into it and you tap into that resilience, like it's there, you have it. And that's just, it's Jewish, but it's like also very specifically like third generation.
100%. Yeah.
I love that.
Thank you for listening to If You Heard What I Heard. If you'd like to learn more about our work and support our mission to make sure the world never forgets, please visit our website, ifyouheardwhatiheard.com. We will never let these stories be lost. It is the job of our generation to make sure future generations never forget so that it never happens again.